Shalom, shalom. Hey everybody. How's it going? Let's see. It says excellent connection. Let me make sure that. Okay, yep, the stream's showing up. Great, great, great. Shalom, Brooke, Mentat Assassin, Betty, Gabriela, Julie. Welcome everyone. Glad you all made it. So tonight we're going to be continuing our reading in 1 Kings. Let me just. Oh, no sound really? Shalom, shalom, shalom. I'm showing sound on my end. Can somebody verify? Shalom, Troy. Is nobody getting sound? Let's see. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. Good. Hey, shalom. Devorah, Betty. Okay, I think it's just you, Julie. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about the weird black void there for a second. The software that I use, I have hotkeys assigned to change the views, like so that I'm not blocking the text. And I was just typing, and for some reason, I guess I have this void view. And when I type in another window, for some reason, the software doesn't understand that, no, don't use the hotkeys now. So I don't know how to set it so that it only does it if I'm focused on the software. So that's why stuff is moving around as I type. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. All right, Yofi. So let me see here real quick. I think we're on verse 12, right? Yeah, that's right. We ended last time with the priests were not able to stand. They weren't able to enter because of the thickness of the cloud, right? Okay, so here we are. Oops. Okay. Oh yeah, and I want to remember our intro there. Where is it? All right. Maybe I'll show the teaching partnership at the end. All right, verse 12. Great. Oh, let's say a quick prayer. Avinu Malkeinu. Our Father and our King, thank you so much for everyone who's here. Ken Yiratzon ki tishlachnat ruach hakodesh aleinu Adonai. Anachnu rotzeim lirot et panecha. Anachnu rotzeim ledat shimcha. Tiftach et fi ki ani yachol ledaber rak yata rotzeh. We want to know your ways. We want to see your face. We want to know your name. Please touch my lips that I may speak the words that you have ordained. V'ta'azerna et kol talmudai lezichronim tovim. And please help all my students with good memories, to have good memories. B'schut Yeshua HaMashiach, by the merit of Yeshua the Messiah. All right. So here we are. Okay, great. We have a minion plus. That's good. So let's get into it. Actually, let me make the Hebrew bigger. Just realized it's probably okay if you're watching on a TV screen or on a decent sized monitor, but not great if you're on a cell phone. So there we go. By the way, the last couple times we have been broadcasting in 4K. So hallelujah. I'm excited about that. If someone who has a 4K device can maybe give me some feedback, let me know if that's looking any better for you. Okay. Az Amar Shlomo. Then, Amar was one of your Hebrew words of the day. Amar is to say. Shlomo, so Solomon. So what did he say? Adonai Amar Lishkon Ba'arafel. Adonai said, okay, now this is interesting. When you have Sometimes when you have amar and lamed, this can express to intend to. It can also express a promise. In 2 Kings, we see it used in a promise. But so that's just kind of a syntax issue there. I'll go ahead and be hyperliteral, but just keep in mind he could be saying Adonai intends to shakan. And I have to make the joke. I'm sorry. I know I've done it before, but shakakan, everybody, rakal. Anyway, so shakan is to inhabit. And if you saw the Hebrew word of the day that I had for yesterday, which was yashav, right? On that word, I mentioned that yashav can mean sit or dwell, like to live somewhere, right? And that the mitzvah in Leviticus tells us that during the festival of Sukkot, we must yashav in the sukkah. So that's why the sages understood that you don't have to actually live in the sukkah, because if you had to live in the sukkah, Hashem would have used this word, shakan, to dwell, right? To indwell, to inhabit, right? Versus yashav, which can mean live or dwell, but it also means sit. So, of course, the Torah is perfect. He chose the perfect word. So, with the Hebrew literacy we need, we can understand that the mitzvah can be fulfilled. The pashat meaning, the plain meaning of the mitzvah, can be fulfilled just by sitting down and eating a meal in the sukkah. So that's kind of something. All right. So Amar le intend. So he intended to shekon, or we'll just be literal. Adonai Amar said lishkon, to inhabit ba'arafel, in the thick cloud. And arafel is a thick cloud, like very thick. Notice this is another word for a cloud. We have the one we usually see when we're talking about the presence is usually he'anan, the cloud, right? Like the glory cloud, right? Something like this. Okay? All right. Verse 13. Bano vanati beit zevul lach. Okay? So now he's speaking to Hashem. See? So this is that guy that we mentioned before, the infinitive absolute. So whenever you see a Hebrew verb, it looks like it repeated itself, and one of the times is changed the way we would expect. Like vaniti, we recognize the T, and that makes us think of ani or anochi, meaning I, right? Like me. Okay, so vaniti, the verb is bana, beit nun he, which means to build. All right? This is actually related to the Hebrew dikduk grammatical term, binyan. The binyan, a verbal stem, is a binyan. It's like a building. They call them buildings, right? So, all right, so, but when you have it repeated, and the first one isn't really in the pattern you'd expect, it doesn't have I, or you, or we, or something like this, then that's probably the special form I was talking about. And so if it comes before the form that makes sense, then it usually means like definitely, indeed. So, bano vaniti means I have definitely built. I remember several years back there was this guy who came to the Philippines, Hebrew roots fellow who's a Levi, right? A Levi. And I remember watching one of his teachings, just kind of trying to feel him out, right? And he was, he's saying, he had an example of this, but like in Ruth, in the book of Ruth. And it was one of these verbs where it appears twice, right? The first one is the infinitive absolute, this form here. And he was saying that the translators were deceiving people because they only translate the word once into English. Look, it only says, I don't remember the example, but we'll pick this example. It only says, I built, when really it should say, building I built, or I built, right? It's in there twice, no. Why don't they translate it right? And so I just bring it up because maybe you'll hear this somewhere else. He's got some teachings out there. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to embarrass him, but that's just not the case. This is just how Hebrew expresses it. So when Hebrew wants to use the verbal form to say definitely, it'll use this form, the infinitive absolute, to say definitely or indeed. So it is correct. Those translators, they're not like being like anti-Torah to not say the verb twice. You're not supposed to say the verb twice. That's not how it works in English. In Hebrew, it works this way. In English, it doesn't. Okay, so no, you don't translate this twice. You're supposed to say indeed. Like, for example, in the Ten Commandments, Zachor tizkor. That's another example of this sort of thing. Zachor, that's the infinitive absolute. So definitely, tizkor, you will remember et Yom HaShabbat, right? Sabbath day. Or shamor tishmor. You will definitely shamar. You'll definitely safeguard, keep, etc. You don't say keeping you will keep, or you will keep, or something, right? We need to use the grammar rules of English when we're speaking in English, right? Make it make sense in English, okay? So anyway, you'll see that a lot. Now, just one other little extra bonus for those of you who are interested in this kind of stuff. If the order is reversed, right? If you put this one after the one that has the form that we recognize, right? Then oftentimes, not all the times, but oftentimes, it gives the idea in time of continuously. So if Solomon had said, instead of bano vaniti, if instead he said baniti vano, right? He swapped these two words, the order, that would usually syntactically imply, I have continuously built, right? Which actually would also work in this context. Hey, shalom Ivan, glad you made it. Obrigado. No falo português. Sorry, I'm limiting my my Portuguese is running out fast. Now. Okay, Bano Vaniti. I have definitely built Beit Zevul, or indeed built. Beit is house of, right? The word for house is bayit, right? I think we had this recently in a word of the day. House is bayit, which is house, but bayit changes to beit. Whenever you see it as beit, it means house of, okay? Like Beit Lechem, house of bread, or Bethlehem, right? Beit Lechem. Bayit is just a house. Beit is house of. Okay. Yofi, de nada. Beit, house of Zevul. This is a poetic word. We have this word, well, they had this word in Ugaritic. In Ugaritic, it's Zuvul. Zuvul is something that is like on a high location, right? And in Hebrew, it has a similar meaning, so it's like lofty, right? So Beit Zevul, like a lofty house, a magnificent house, something like that. Not necessarily, in Hebrew, it doesn't necessarily imply the high elevation like it does in Ugaritic, but very similar, okay? A Beit Zevul, a magnificent house, a lofty residence, lach. So usually, we would see this as lecha, for you. But this word is in pause. It's that thing I've talked to you guys about sometimes, how this probably has an etnachta under it, the little wishbone thing. They don't put them in the comic book, so I'm not sure. But so when you have one of those very strong ta'amim, one of the strong sense signs, what it does is it will lengthen sometimes a vowel. When the vowel can be lengthened, it will lengthen it, right? And the spelling changed a little bit. So instead of lecha, the little the vocal schwa became a ah, right? Because they had it memorized as Bano vaniti beit zavulach machon leshivtecha olamim, right? So you kind of have this rhythm as you're reading along, and it helps people to memorize, right? So we have that tradition embedded in the text, so the text is pointed this way with the vowels. We don't know. Shlomo HaMelech, he might have actually said lecha, right? But the tradition, because of the way that people memorize the text, has it as lach. So that's why that's pointed that way, okay? Hey, shalom, Christopher. Okay. Yanasi. Okay. Machon. Machon is very similar to makom. Makom means place, but machon is like a site. Not sight with your eyes, but like a site, like a location. In this example of an architectural project. So, machon, a site. Leshivtecha. So, this is hard to recognize, this verb. The verb is actually yashav. Yashav, to sit or to dwell. But, as I mentioned before, often when you have a verb that starts with a yod, the yod will disappear. Okay? That's why it's kind of hard to recognize the root here. So that's the root. It's yashav. It's not shavat. Okay? Don't get confused. You might see that shavat and get excited. Oh, stop working. a place for you to stop working. No. It's from yashav. Yashav, when it becomes an infinitive, it becomes shevet. We put the lamed in front. Leshevet is to sit or to dwell. Leshivtecha is for the sitting or the dwelling of cha, of you. For you to sit or for you to dwell. So we know it's not sit. Hashem doesn't need to sit, right? So for you to dwell. And we're talking about the Beit Zevul, the house on high, a magnificent house. Hey, Shalom, Sosa, and Tet. Glad you guys made it. All right, 21 likes. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Olamim. Olamim. So, olam This was also a word of the day we had. I think at the request of Beaten Horse, he had wanted me to talk about that word, so we did that 2 Sundays ago. Olam. So olam, it can mean, well, in the Bible, it usually means forever. Forever, like infinity, okay? Olamim literally is eternities, right? Eternities. The specific nuance of using it in the plural, not always, but usually in Tanakh, is it's in the future, right? The event. So I built this house. He's looking back to the past, right? Banov aniti beit zavul. I indeed have built this magnificent house. Lach for you, machon, a site, lashitacha for you to dwell. Now the idea is he wasn't in there yet. He's not dwelling in there yet. Olamim, forever. But the little nuance of putting in the plural is that it hasn't yet happened yet from the perspective of when he was building the house. You see? You don't have to know all that, but that's just those of you who are curious. Now, some people get confused with this word because of how we use it in rabbinical Hebrew, right? So, olam can mean the world or the universe, like in the brachas that we say, right? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, right? Bless you, Lord our God, King of the olam, ha'olam, the universe, right? We're calling him the Adon, or we have the famous Adon Olam Hashem Alach, Adon Olam, the master of the universe. But this is a later nuance of the word. In the Bible, the word has to do with time, okay? So, great. Nice. Okay, let me take a quick drink. I'm going to make myself disappear for just a moment. Get so thirsty when teaching. Any comments or questions? Did anybody have a Hebrew grammar question, maybe? Or just something, it doesn't have to be technical about grammar, some pattern in the words you've been wondering about? Don't be shy. Feel free to ask. If you ask, if you're wondering, chances are there's plenty of other people who are wondering as well. Well, this is Hebrew immersion, so you're not expected to know all the grammar. You're not expected to understand everything yet. You don't even have to know how to read yet, right? This can be helping you to learn to read. So whatever level you're at, the expectation is that this will help you from all the way from very beginner to advanced. Okay, the immersion, being in the text. This is what it is to be Israel, to struggle with. The name Israel doesn't mean to struggle with God. I hate that people say that, right? It doesn't mean to struggle with God. If you stop and think about it, it doesn't even make sense. An angel wrestled with him. And according to Midrash Tanhuma and Midrash Breshit Rabbah, very trusted Midrashim, it was the guardian angel of Esau, right? Okay, so we even know who the angel was in our tradition, in trusted Midrashim, okay? So why would the angel just wrestle with him, say, I'm going to call you wrestle with God, because you wrestle with God? It doesn't make sense. You don't have to know Hebrew. You just think about it, right? His name doesn't mean he wrestles with God or wrestles with God. And it's actually kind of, it bothers me to hear people saying this, because it's actually kind of anti-Semitic. Like, oh, those Jews and their ancestors, they're wrestling with God. It doesn't mean that. This comes from a very superficial knowledge of Hebrew that people think it means wrestle with God, right? So what happens a lot of times when people are learning words, they might learn like a gloss, right? And that's fine. That's fair to do in the beginning, to learn glosses. So you can start your wrestling with the text on another level, right? But a gloss is just like a one-word, sometimes two-word, just a pithy description of the word, right? But if you listen to if you looked at the one word, the Elohim, when I talk about Elohim, even though we only had 60 seconds, I made sure to point out that it doesn't just mean God. It can mean gods, it can mean angels. And El is a resident of the spiritual realm. A dead human is an El in Hebrew. You understand? Okay? So it doesn't really just mean God. That's not the nuance that's happening in this word. Yisrael, in my book I translated he wrestles with the divine, right? Wrestle with the divine. I.e. angels are divine, like divine beings, right? Etc. And that makes more sense, right? Someone who dares to wrestle with an angel even, you see? The words, they're heavily nuanced in biblical Hebrew. So you got to be very careful if someone's just taking a gloss and they're building a theology or something heavy off of that, okay? We have to go deep. That's the time to go deep. So even now you might be learning a lot of glosses. That's fine and that's normal and it's correct, okay? But when you're focusing on a section of text, let's say you're giving a Devar Torah, you're going to have a study session on the Torah, Maybe you host it at your house, like a home group or something, or you're teaching in front of Kahal. when we go deep, right? That's when we really look at all the possible meanings of the word to see what could be being hinted at the text. So one of the practical applications for all of you who no doubt all of you are either native born or grafted in to Israel, sons and daughters of Israel, is to understand Yisrael is to wrestle with the divine, and I think very often that means to wrestle with the text, like we're doing right now, okay? So don't be discouraged, even if a lot of this is over your head right now. You are wrestling indeed, taking on a mighty mammoth. All right, Yvonne has a question about the Vav consecutive. If it can change a future verb to the past, why not just use the past in the first place? Okay, that is a deep question. All right, so to answer that, I'm going to have to go a little bit deep into Northwestern Semitics, okay? So what this means is the whole family of languages from this region, right? So you got Hebrew, Ugaritic, Akkadian, not so much Akkadian, some Akkadian, but like Hittite, these different languages, Semitic languages, right? They're all related to Hebrew. We find when we look at some of these older texts that this form, this is called the Yiktol form, if we're talking about what's usually future and now becoming past. We find that some of the Northwest Semitic languages actually use the Yiktol to express the past, you see? Why did my light turn off? That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, whatever. They use it to express the past, you see? And Hebrew being very old, this means that there are times when the language holds on to it. So I'm telling you guys, the Vav changes the time, okay? But I also slipped in there when I first shared this concept. That's not really what's happening, but that's good for understanding, right? So on a deep grammatical level, that's not what's happening, okay? On a deep grammatical level, what's happening is they're just using the old Yiktol meaning, right? The old meaning for that to be a past tense, but a continuous past tense, right? Something, you understand? I'm sorry, not necessarily continuous, but the Vav consecutive. So that's really what's happening. It's really just, it shows up when the Vav is there. For whatever reason, and this ties into a little bit about what Dwayne was saying last week when he mentioned the narrative formula, using Vav consecutive for a narrative, right? Specifically, we see it with Vayhi, and it came to pass, or and it was, right? That sort of thing. So for whatever reason, the narrative style, when people would want to express something, the feeling was to use this older form of the verb. So that's really what's happening. And you see this actually in Psalms. If we keep going, and we're in Psalms on Thursday, right? So it's going to show up sometimes in Psalms. In Psalm, you'll have a Yiktol form, which usually is future, right, or present, used in the past without a Vav consecutive, right? Without the Vav. So that's where you're really seeing, and some of the Psalms are very old language. So that's when you get like a snapshot into the old biblical Hebrew, right? And then later, that same form was used, but the trick they used was just the Vav. So that was just the way to clean people off, the hearer, into, okay, I'm using this older form now. You see? That's really what's happening, Yvonne. It's not that the Vav is changing the time. It's that it's signaling the listener that we're using an older form, the older meaning of the form. Does that make sense? So yeah, so I knew you would eventually ask about it. So here you are. So I did protect myself by saying it's not really changing the time, but for us, for practical purposes, for all intents and purposes, it makes sense to just say it's changing the time. Because for a modern reader looking what's happening, the meaning's the same. If you say it changed the time, it changed the time. Okay? So really it's a holdout from an older mode of expressing things in an older style of archaic Hebrew that has survived into the Torah and into the Tanakh. And the mechanism it used was the Vav to clue the reader into, hey, the kind of time that I'm expressing here. If it was a continuous form, now it's not continuous. If it wasn't continuous, now it is continuous, right? Completed or incomplete. It's more like an aspect, really, more than time. They're hinting about how the aspect has changed, okay? And if that went over anybody's head, don't worry. That answer was for Yvonne and anybody else who's wondering about it. We have different levels of learners here and different levels of inquisitiveness, and some people are used to learning languages. Like I know Yvonne lives in Brazil, but you're American, right? So presumably you're learning Portuguese. Yeah, okay, good. Brooke asks, so God's presence would be there for Olam, even if the temple was destroyed? This is the man's perspective, right? The one speaking is not God. The one speaking is Shlomo HaMelech, right? He's the one who's saying his purpose he's saying, Balo vaniti, I indeed have built Beit Zavul, a magnificent house, lach, for you. He's talking to God, right? Machon, a site, l'shivtecha, for you to dwell. Olamim. And if we hadn't sinned, if we hadn't broken the Sabbaths, and if we hadn't broken the sabbatical years, yeah, we would still have the first temple even, and his presence would still be there, right? But we did sin repeatedly, and so the plan had to change. De nada. Good, okay. Brooke says, or his presence for Olam in the temple as long as the temple's intact. Exactly. And look how the plan has changed, though. Now, our bodies are intended to be in the process of becoming the temple, right? So that the Holy Spirit might dwell within us, right? So there's a shift now to the living temple. There's now a living temple for the full indwelling of the Shekhinah, right? And the best example of that, of course, was Mashiach walking on the earth as a mobile Mishkan, basically, like a Mishkan that can move around with Shekhinah in there. Let me see if I can get this back on. There we go. Don't know why that light's fizzing out. Okay, sure. You're very welcome. Nice questions, guys. Okay. Gals, in this case. All right, so let's continue on. So the Olamim, the plural is because it's in the future, okay? And you can see, the king's very excited about this, right? Verse 14. Actually, I'm going to take another drink real quick. Hope you guys don't mind. I really hope that's not picking up my slurps. I would mute my microphone, but the mute, I bought a used one, and it's a good mic, but the mute button is a little bit weird. It doesn't always, sometimes it sticks and it doesn't. And what happened to me a lot in the past is I would hit mute, I'd take a drink, I'd come back, I'd unhit mute, but it wouldn't unmute. And I'm talking for a few minutes and people are like, hey, no sound. so now I'd rather not mute it if I don't have to. Hey, shalom, Dr. Dwayne. All right. So continue with verse 14. V'yasev hamelech et panayv. Vayvarech et kol kahal Yisrael. V'chol kahal Yisrael omed. Okay. Very nice. Interesting thing happening there. Okay. So, this verb is from savav, which we mentioned that the other night. This is where we get the word for dreidel from. You guys know dreidel? Dreidel. I made it out of clay. So, dreidel is svivon in Hebrew. It's something that's savavs, that goes around. Okay? Now, the dagesh is in there because you'll see this happening with words where, of the three root letters, two of the letters are the same. Usually the duplicate will disappear and we get a dagesh somewhere to show us that that's there. That's what's happening here. Okay? And this is also a he-fil form. You can tell by the tseri there. I won't get into that too much. So, and then the yod tells us it's he. Okay? The vav changes the time, so instead of future, it's past. Vayasev hamelech. So the king caused to go around et panayv, his face or his presence or in front of him. Vayvarech. Yevarech, you should recognize, right? Yevarech is he will bless. Vayvarech means and he blessed et kol kahal Yisrael. All of the kahal, that's the assembly, right? Like we call a synagogue a kahal, well, the congregation a kahal. Yisrael, of Yisrael. Vechol, and all the kahal of Yisrael, omed. He was standing. Okay? Interesting, because kahal is a he, so omed is a he. That's why it's not plural, even though it's a lot of people. It's reflecting this guy here. Okay, remember Ahmad Rashad? So Ahmad is to stand. Omed is timeless. It could be will be standing, was standing, is standing, so we have to fit the context. All right. So, with the time we have left, I don't think we're going to get through all of this. But I will show you. Here we have Shlomo HaMelech. He's praying, right? Saying his prayer there. And, okay. All right, I was going to switch to a Hebrew Bible for this. But, yeah, maybe we still will. Let's see. Okay, 1 Kings, what are we? Chapter 8. That's verse 15. Since we just have one picture, right, we might as well have the good text. verse 15. Yeah, okay, good. Okay. So let's, the Bible there. Okay. And here is, of course, our verse 15, which notice you got 12, 13, 14, 11. They're all yod, 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 yod. And now it's not a yod because we're protecting God's name. So in the Hebrew Bible, it's protecting the nickname of God, right? Ka. Yod, Hey is what we would have expected, but instead of Yod, 10 plus Hey, 5, we get Tet, Vav, 9 plus 6. That's 15, all right? Vayomer, and he said, Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael. And you'll notice there's no vowels here. This is actually the Tetragrammaton. Yod, Hey, Waw, Hey, okay? And he said, Blessed is Adonai Elohei, the God of Yisrael. So it's actually Elohim. This word, I think, was the word of the day last Shabbat, right? So Elohim, it ends in a mem, right? So it's like, and when you have a plural word that ends in a mem and you drop the mem, it means of. So Elohei is Elohim of Yisrael, the God of Israel. Asher hu diber spoke. Befiv, with the mouth of him. So with his mouth. Eight. David, Avi, the Av, that was today's Hebrew word of the day. Av, father. The father of Yod is me, the father of me. So, my father. Hey, glad you're feeling better, GN Animations. Uveyado, look at this little word in Hebrew. Uveyado. In English it's u, and, ve, by, yad, hand or authority of him. Uviado, and by his authority, milei, he filled up, lemor saying, like, it's actually hinting about some kind of ordination, right? Verse Tet Zayin, so we're still protecting the name. So this is 9 plus 7, so 16. Min hayom asher hotzeiti. From, that's min, it's from. Don't be mean when you're from. I don't know, it didn't work. Hayom, the day. Asher, when. So Asher, we usually learn this to mean, we gloss it as which or who, but it actually can mean when also, right? When, hotzeti. So the verb is yatsa. And remember, if a verb starts with yod, sometimes that yod changes to a vav, and that's what's happening here. And this is a he-feel form. You see the hey at the beginning? That's the causative form. Causative. So, hotzeti, the T reminds you of ani or anochi. The E part of ani, anochi, hotzeti. So it's I. I'm the one doing it. So, hotzeti, so I caused to come out. Et ami, my people, the am of E. So the people of me. So I brought out my people. And now he clarifies who is his people? Et Yisrael. Me. So me, this is the same thing as min. You see here the min? Look what's happening. This is actually very interesting. If you've never noticed this phenomenon before. So the word min is how we say from. Okay? And you should know this if you know a couple of the standard brachas, like Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamotzi lachem min haaretz, right? The blessing for the bread, who brings forth bread, min, from, haaretz, the earth, okay? Or the land, okay? So min means from. But look over here. We only have the mem part. Only that mem survived. The nun assimilated. See the dagesh inside this mem? Right? Like we've been seeing, this happens a lot. Happens with nifal verbs, right? It happens, a lot of times there'll be a letter that's just going to say, it happens with lakach, the lamed will go in there. So the nun, he's sandwiched inside. Hashem could have said min Mitzrayim if he wanted to. But min Mitzrayim works just as well. Sandwich it together and the n assimilates. So we've got, literally, there are 3 mems here. The first mem, and then this strong dagesh tells us there are 2 mems here. So Mim Mitzrayim is how that would have been said in ancient times. Okay? So, Min Hayom, from the day Asher when Hotzeti, I brought out et Ami, my people, et Yisrael, Mim Mitzrayim, from Egypt. Dr. Rain says, why min and not mean in pronunciation? Yeah, that's a good question. It just kind of depends, right? So when it stands alone, we'll say min, right? Yeah, go. Let me think. Hold on, I have to think. I thought I had the answer for you right away. Okay, so here, the reason it's min here is because the makef tells us this is read as one word, right? So the only accent on this compound word is where we have the revi'i, right here, or revi'ah, some people call that little diamond. So this is one word now. So since it's one word, the rules for pronunciation of the vowels are if you have a closed... By the way, sorry if this is complicated. If this is too complicated for anybody listening, just don't worry. When you have a closed syllable, that means it ends in a consonant, and it is unaccented, which this one is, because it's one word, the revi'ah or the revi'i is over here, then that means it has to have a short vowel. So this must be pronounced I, min ha'ar, min hayom. No, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it, Dr. Dwayne. I'm sure others are curious about that too. Yeah, so that's what's happening. And then there's a similar thing happening here. So when you have a letter with a strong dagesh in it, that means there's two of them. So whatever vowel you have underneath, that's the second vowel, okay? The first vowel will be a schwa. So really this is mem with a hirik, and then a mem with a schwa. And here's the accent over here with the segolta. That's the accent, right? Okay, it's over here. So again, you have a closed syllable that's unaccented, so it must be pronounced short, okay? When the accent falls on it, then we can pronounce it mean. Yeah, good question. You made me think there for a second, like, what is going on? So that was good. Okay, Mim Mitzrayim, lo vacharti. Lo, not, vacharti. So bachar is to choose. And the bacharti, again, that T makes you think of ani, bacharti. I did not choose the ir, or I haven't chosen the ir. So this is idiomatic. Don't translate this, I haven't chosen in an ir, in a city. City means, ir means city, so just think of like there's a bunch of skyscrapers coming out of your ear, okay? Or a giant ear on the ground. It's a city, ir. This is an idiom. To choose requires usually the bait. So we have a very famous prayer in the Siddur. Ki bachar banu mikol ha'amim, for he has chosen us. Bachar, he chose, banu. We don't say he chose in us. We say he chose us. Mikol ha'amim, from all the peoples, etc., etc. Okay? So lo vacharti ve'ir, I haven't chosen a city, right? Don't say in a city. That'll sound weird. Mikol, from all, look, there it is again, the dagesh from the min, right? The noon went in there. Mikol shivtei. So this is shevatim, which means tribes or staves. In this case, clearly he's not choosing staves, okay? So, shevatim, we drop the mem to make it say of. Shivtei, the tribes of Yisrael, of Israel. Livnot. This one's tricky. This is, again, bana. Beit nun hey, and the hey went away. Or in the infinitive, the hey becomes a tav, okay? You get this, like, it looks like a plural ending. And there's the lamed. That's kind of the giveaway that this is an infinitive. Infinitives, in case you don't remember, in English it's to do something, right? To do, to jump, to kill, to cook. Those are infinitives, okay? We have them in Hebrew too. Leave note, to build, buy it, a house. Lichyot, this is the infinitive for to be. Lichyot, to be, shemi. That's Shem, which is name of me. My name, Sham, there. Va'evcha b'David. But, or now, or so, evchar. So this is that verb again, vachar. This is the perfect version. Vacharti, it's a completed action. Lo vacharti, I haven't chosen. And then this is imperfect. So they both are I. The aleph in the front reminds you of the aleph in anochi, or ani. Okay? And this one, the E at the end reminds us of the end of the word ani or anochi, okay? Those are little memory tricks to pull it out of the verb. So evchar means I am choosing. Well, evchar plus beit. I am choosing or I will choose. The vav is changing the time. Va'evchar, but I chose beDavid, David. Again, don't say I chose in David. That's not what it means. It's just the syntax. This verb, bachar, requires beit. I chose David, or actually, I like to read the names the way they probably were. Probably with Dawiv or Dawiv. We're not sure. Not totally sure. The only thing we're sure is that the Vav was a W sound. Dawiv. And see, great. This comes back to your question, Dwayne. I'm glad you asked. Notice it's not Dawid. It's Dawid. I'll just read it with the normal David, right? Because we have the little accent mark here. So that is able to make a long E sound then. Great. That's really great you asked that. Good. Lichyot, to be. Al can mean upon or with or near. Ami, my people, Yisrael. Okay, how are we on time? Let me do a quick time check. 40 minutes. Okay, we can do a bit more. I'm trying to make 45 the cutoff. Feel free to jump in if you have a question. Actually, I am going to allow myself to... What happened? Let me get a drink of water real quick. I'll be fast. Back. Oh, I just saw your comment, Dwayne. So Mimitzrayim is Mimitzrayim. Mimitzrayim. In this case, it's still going to be Mimitzrayim, right? Because what's happening is, so you have short vowel, mem, with a schwa. That's because this is doubled. And then we have short vowel, and then tsadi with a schwa, and then the accent's over here. So it's still another closed, unaccented syllable, so it still needs a short pronunciation. Yeah. Julie says, how do I know when the lamed is an infinitive or part of the word? Well, first, if it's a verb, hunt for the 3 root letters. You try to figure out what the 3 root letters are, okay? If you found them already, and the lamed is extra, then you know it's a lamed. If one of them is hiding, like it's a pei yod, like the yod disappeared, or the hey, and you don't catch it, then it's tricky. Yeah, then it gets tricky. Yeah, good question, Julie. Okay. All right, let's see. But you know, Dwayne, so many people, they read it Mi Mitzrayim. It's just, American Jewry. So, there's really not, yeah, So, Dwayne's a bit of a perfectionist, so yeah. But just, you're going to hear it wrong all the time. It's just, I'm pretty sure, yeah, I think for many, many years in the synagogue, I always heard Mi Mitzrayim also. In fact, there's a tendency in me to want to say it that way, right? From hearing it the wrong way for so long. So you're in good company if you slip up and say Mi Mitzrayim or Mi Mitzrayim. You're in totally good company. Yeah. Yvonne says, the comments in I chose hints at ani. And you mentioned that there was another vowel that reminds us of it. Okay, let me see. So okay, so this one, the lo v'charti, I didn't choose ve'ir, a city. It's the ending of the verb. When you see T at the end of the verb, the E part of that can remind you of ani, the end of ani, right? Or anochi, the words for I, right? And then in this case, we have an imperfect form of the verb. So evchar, in this case, the aleph prepended to the beginning should remind you of the aleph in, not the vowel necessarily, because look, it's a segol here, it's even, but the aleph is reminding you of aleph nun yod, ani, I, or anochi, the more rare form, anochi. They both start with aleph. So here it's the ending of ani, or anochi, that reminds you because it's at the end of the verb, and here it's the beginning because it's at the beginning of the verb. This is just my thing, I'm just saying it as a way. There's not like a hard and fast rule, but this is how it works for recognizing it. It totally works. Okay? That should remind you. So if it's at the end of the verb and it's E, then, unless it's a suffix, right? If it's part of the verb, like, it's going to be T, really, the full thing, the T. So I'm having to throw away the tav for this memory trick to work, okay? But it reminds you of the end of ani. If it's at the beginning of the verb, then look at the beginning of ani, and if the aleph is there, then there you go, okay? All right. 44 minutes, okay. Maybe we'll read one more verse. Yeah, okay. It's a nice verse. Let's finish with 17 and then we'll be done for tonight. Vayehi. And this is the one Dwayne was talking about last week, right? It's showing the narrative. And it was Aim Levav David. So here's the subject. With Levav David, with the heart of David, Avi, my father, right? Livnot, to build, bayit, a house, L'Shem Adonai, for the name of Yod-Heh, Waw-Heh, for the name of Adonai, Elohei Yisrael, the God of Israel. Okay, so we'll stop there tonight so I don't go past the 45 minutes. You're very welcome, Yvonne. Nice questions, good interaction tonight. Does anybody have a lingering question you were nervous to ask? If so, you can go ahead, ask it now or forever hold your peace. Just kidding. You can always put in the comments afterwards, right? So we have the live chat now, but afterwards there'll be live comments, and I do check those. I try to check it daily. If you ever asked me something and I didn't respond, I didn't have the greatest system before for checking comments, but now I'm on it every day. I'm checking. I don't want to leave anybody's question unanswered. And you can, of course, always join us. Yes, thank you, Christopher. The Omer 28. All right, my wingman, Christopher. Great. Let's say the blessing for the Omer, but this is only for those of us over in the Eastern Hemisphere. For those of you in the West, it's still 27. If you didn't say the blessing last night and you're on 27, you can just with intent and purpose just say 27, right? Thinking to Hashem, showing Hashem you're remembering. Even though we're not bringing an Omer gift to him, we're still remembering that the duty is there, even though we cannot do it. Okay, so for those of us where it's dark already, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lesefirat et haomer esrim v'shmoneh. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to count the Omer 28. Woo! Thank you for reminding me about that, Christopher. Okay, Devorah asks, are all Sidurs the same? No. So, no. There's a great variety in Sidurs. So, there's different nusachs, like traditions. So you can get like an Ashkenaz Siddur, like the German Jewish Siddur, right? Like that would be my family's tradition. Or you could get like a Sephardi Siddur, the Spanish Jewish, which is really like a Middle Eastern. A lot of the Spanish Jews there, they're only from Spain in 1492. They left, right? And so after that, they're like, in Morocco and over in Arabia and stuff, right? All over the place. And then there's all kinds of traditions. Although the core elements are going to be the same if it's an Orthodox Siddur that you're getting, okay? If you get like a Messianic Siddur, a lot of them are nice, but a lot of them miss the meat. They leave out a lot of the prayers and stuff like that. So if you're interested in the Siddur, I've been thinking about, again, all these projects I want to do, maybe doing a Siddur class. I don't know. Let's see. Let's focus on Torah first, and then maybe we can do a Siddur class if there's enough interest down the road a bit. Okay? And feel free to ask this or any other questions over at, I'll type it in the chat, t.me/messianic chat. And today is Wednesday, so let me just close with one little thing here. This is what I told you guys I would show at the end. Slide. And then we go. If you need to go, if you're going to work or something, that's okay. There we go. All right, make sure today, if you have the chance, to check out Dr. Dwayne's teaching over at matzadi.com or his YouTube page. I have it over here on the left. You can see it. He's teaching on Isaiah, every Hebrew word in Isaiah, translating it all, tying it to the Targumim, the teachings of the sages, connecting it to apostolic writings and to the triennial Torah portion. Very interesting stuff. Hope you guys will check it out. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right, Dwayne? You're very welcome, Brenda. All right.